In the previous exercise, we learned about measure item, and measure item is great for finding the distances or lengths of elements. For example, I know the length of this line and this line over here on the bottom, but when I get the length of this one here, that's not the length representing the true height of this part. So in order to get the true height of this part, you want to use measure between. So since I'm going to use measure between and measure instead of measure item, I'm just going to cancel and it will remove all those measurements we created. So to find the height, measure between would allow me to grab one line and then grab a parallel line, and it's giving me a distance of 0 because I got the face. So let's try that again under measure between. I'm going to try and grab that one edge. I'm going to wait for my navigator to make sure I'm grabbing one edge. And I'm going to wait for my navigator again to tell me I'm grabbing an edge. See, it says a face. I'm going to try and move that. Grab that face again. Now, see how it says there's an edge and then there's a face? So from that list, I can pick. And I'm going to, oops, it went off on me. So I'm going to pick the edge. No, it got the face. Let's try that again. Measure between. Put my cursor there with the edge highlighted. I'm not going to move my cursor because it wants to grab the edge right now. I'll come back over here. I'll wait, and I know I'm grabbing the edge now, and it gives me the distance. What I do is I just kind of click a location, and then, or just click on it, and then I should be able to grab. Oh, sometimes it doesn't want to do it until I say OK. Let's try that again under measure between. We're going to grab this edge. Wait for the navigator to tell me it's clear. I'm going to move this out of the way, and then I'm going to try and grab this. Sometimes when it's on the face, it wants to grab the face. It doesn't allow me to grab that. Okay, if it does that to you, just say OK and then try and move it again. I'll just move that there like this. So that's 4 inches. Now I know the total height of that part. I'll select OK, and it creates that measurement. So if you're having troubles with this, just create one and say OK. Now, if I do what I just did earlier was measure between, and I grab 2 parallel lines. If I grab 2 lines that are not parallel, for example, it's not letting me get that edge. I'm trying to grab that edge right there. It keeps grabbing that. Oh, what's going on here is I got this measurement. See that measurement line? It's getting in my way. What I'll do is I'll try and grab on this. I'm going to turn this measure off. I'm going to try and grab on this and move it out of the way. And we'll go to measure between. And under measure between, I'll see if I can get the edge now. So that edge and the edge of that line gives me a distance of 0 because those 2 lines have an intersection point. But if I customize that, I can turn the distance off. I can't turn distance off. I gotta have something on. So I'm going to turn angle on and the distance off. And you can see I have an angle of 135 degrees. So measure between is often used to find the distance between 2 lines or 2 angles. Another purpose for this would be I want to find the dimension to the center of the hole from the bottom. So I grab this edge, and what I do next is I grab the edge of this hole, not the center. Grab the edge of the hole, and what's going on is there's no angle, so it gives me nothing. I've got to switch angle off, but remember, angle won't go off until you pick distance. So I give it a distance and then remove the angle. And now the distance from the center of the hole to the edge of the part is 2 inches. Again, I'll do it in this direction from this edge to this hole. And this time I'm grabbing the center of the hole, and I grab that, and I get, sometimes it gives me something really weird when I get that center line that it's dimensioning to. So grabbing to the center of the hole grabs the dimension of this axis in the center. When you grab to the edge of the hole, it finds the center point of the hole. It measures to the center point of the hole. And that's the difference between those. I'll select OK. Again, the reason why the measurements stay on the screen is because under measure, I made sure, under measure between, I made sure to have keep measure on in that pop-up window. Okay, I'm going to expand the tree. You can see I have 4 measurements. When I click on them, it highlights which measurement those are. If I right click on the top, I can hide them all real quick. I can right click and hit show real quick. I can hit undo to put them back in hide, and undo again to throw them back in show. Okay, so right click, contextual menu, hide and show is how I'm doing that. And if you do one and you want to undo it, you just simply hit Control Z to undo that. Okay. Again, if you want to remove them all real quick, right click on the measurement and hit delete. All the measurements are gone. Earlier we did a measure between. If you grab this edge and this edge, I'm presuming the part is 4 inches tall, and I know it is 4 inches tall. But the safest play would be to grab the top of the face, or the top face of the part and the bottom face of the part. That will tell me that the face features themselves are parallel and the faces are parallel to each other at a distance of 4 inches. If they were not, they will give you an angle. So let's compare. I grab the top and I grab the bottom, and you notice that it doesn't look as pretty. Okay, but if you're more concerned about whether or not the faces are really parallel versus those two edges, there's nothing to say when you measure the edge on the front that the edges on the back are actually 4 inches. There could be a slight chamfer going up. You might not know. So the safe play would be to measure the top and the bottom, and we get a distance of 4 inches here. Okay, the only thing I don't like is it kind of comes off at weird angles when you're doing measure plane to plane. Alright, so for yourself, if you want to make sure, somebody else has to be absolutely sure that it is 4 inches from top to bottom, you have to select the planes to be absolutely sure. Otherwise, all I know is that these two lines are parallel to each other and 4 inches apart. Let's hit undo to remove those measurements. So I told you if you got 2 planes and they were parallel, it will give you the distance between the 2 parallel planes. So far, measured distance has been to find the distance between 2 parallel lines, or 2 lines at an angle, or the center point of the hole. Now I've showed you a distance from 2 parallel planes. Let's try this plane and this plane, which are not parallel to each other. So back to measure between. Grab the top surface. Grab this surface over here. The minimum distance is 0. The reason why the minimum distance is 0 is there's no gap between those two surfaces where they are adjacent. What is adjacent? Well, that's why we have to take the math classes, so we learn terms like adjacent. Adjacent means that this line and this line have the same endpoint where they meet. Or in this case, I went from this face to this face. Those two faces are adjacent where this seam is, which would be good. That means that they're touching. There's no overlap and there's no gap. the edge is the same edge for both faces. Same with this face to this face. The edge here on the bottom is adjacent to both lines. So back to measure between. When I select the top surface and that chamfered surface, why did I not get an angle? Why am I getting the distance? I'm hoping you figured out because you have to customize it. And you have to add the angle and remove the distance. And now I can see the angle for this plane. These two faces are 135 degrees. Select OK. Again, how I did that is I went measure between, grabbed one face and another face, and it tells me that that is a 135 degree angle between these two faces. If I want to make sure that this is perpendicular, I could go measure between, grab these two faces, and select OK. And now I have my angles on there. So I know that it's a 90-degree angle. That tells me that those are perpendicular. So again, measure between is for selecting multiple elements and checking lengths or distances or angles between the two elements you're choosing. Alright, you can continue on to the next video, which is all about the inertia function.